Hi everyone, this is Anthony O'Flynn coming to you from the Sunshine Coast. It's great to see the sun here today, or at least some sun here today after the devastation with the floods and the ongoing rain here. This video I'll be talking about the mass formation and the normalisation of pathological unwellness that's at a global level. But first I just wanted to let everyone know that our Easter retreat is coming up very soon, actually in just over 4 weeks in the Gold Coast hinterland. It's an amazing venue, purpose-built retreat centre, and it's one of the most profound events that we offer. If you're coming interstate, there's a complimentary shuttle service from the Gold Coast airport to the retreat centre and return at the end of the retreat. So the places are starting to fill up. We just had another booking this morning. So check that out. I'll put a link to the website in the details. So really what we're seeing occur at a global level is this, as I mentioned, this pathological normalisation of unwellness or insanity or obsession, we could say that as well. But really the mass formation is actually an effect. It's not actually a cause. And in my view, the mass formation is an effect of fear that is circulating in the consciousness of the collective, obviously at an individual level as well. And what the cartel have done is that they have amplified this fear, they've harnessed this fear, and they've channeled this fear in a way that their theme is unified. And this mass formation means that there is a normalisation of this ongoing fear, uncertainty, and all the aspects of fear that are in the human consciousness. But the key aspect of this is the effect, is the fact that this has been harnessed or compressed and pushed out relentlessly through the media to infect the consciousness of the collective at a global level, and it has been incredibly successful. But if the fear at an individual level is not present to a degree in shades, then this process would not be successful. So fear is basically the weapon of this entire global agenda. And yet this fear at the same time is a key aspect of the formation because it creates this solidarity, and it's a solution. It means that the solution is to create this solidarity, even if it's artificial or constructed, and then to basically project or to direct this anxiety, this fear, onto this one topic of the pandemic. And therefore it's given an outlet, it's given an identity for the fear, and in some ways then the fear is transferred from the individual to the actual topic, the pandemic, and this is done at a collective level while producing solidarity, which is the key aspect of this whole process, to create this solidarity and then at the same time this division which is manufactured between people who are engaging in the mass formation and people who are not. And this object of the anxiety is locked on, and this Belgian psychologist Matthias Desmet actually did a lot of good work, has done a lot of good work on this process to understand the psychology of the collective, the psychology of the hive mind and how it's functioning. Because the cartel are experts at human psychology. They understand the way people think better than most people understand themselves, and they understand how to tap into these reptilian aspects of the brain, this ability to produce these states of fear, and then coordinate an agenda to have the solution to these states of fear, which is actually completely diabolical, as we all know. So this in essence is to basically take the collective, and the more attached an individual's consciousness is to the collective, is to the hive mind, the more easy they influence, the more easy that they are able to control through the mass media, through the propaganda, and in this way they can have belief systems inserted into their mind, which paradoxically they believe they are choosing. They're not choosing anything at all. They are basically their consciousness is simply being programmed. That's why it's called a television program. And they are basically then programmed with the belief system and then the actions that flow from that belief system. The biggest trick of all is that they actually believe that they are coming to these conclusions themselves, which is completely laughable when you are actually more detached from the hive mind and in a higher state of consciousness to perceive the workings of this extremely sophisticated, very well planned and very well executed agenda, which of course is creating a lot of suffering around the world. Now, one of the other big realizations of this entire psychological process is to understand that the ability to detach from the hive mind, to perceive reality as it is, to not be hypnotized by the propaganda, is due to consciousness. Many of those who are buying into the propaganda, the official mainstream narrative, hide behind their intellect, their socioeconomic status, their profession, their postcode, their wealth, their education, the qualifications that they have. All of these things have nothing to do with consciousness whatsoever. And this will be very confronting going forwards in this conversation in the wake of the colossal damage that we're starting to see from the uptake of the various solutions to the pandemic. And it will be very confronting for people to realize that their intellect, their intelligence, their qualifications, their profession, their IQ, all these things that I've been talking about, does not correlate to consciousness. Consciousness is something completely different. And the reality is that the hive mind is actually at a very low consciousness. And the hive mind is not necessarily bad. It could be programmed for good things, for positive things, for beneficial things. But the agenda of the elite, particularly through various puppet politicians, NGOs, the mainstream media, and a lot of other public organisations, are using the tools to program the collective for negative states of mind, particularly ones that are fear orientated, as this is the easiest one to manipulate the consciousness of people. And so we're coming to the realization that, well, the understanding basically that there are three groups emerging in our society, or have been there continually, and this is one of the themes in my book. And it's basically, the premise is that 30% of the population is hypnotised. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, there is no recognition that this hypnosis is occurring or has taken place. A hypnotised person does not know that they're hypnotised. 40% are not hypnotised, but go along with the crowd. And 30% are simply immune to mind control. They cannot be mind controlled. It doesn't work on them. Why? Because their consciousness is higher. And these figures are debatable. Personally, I think these figures are slightly inaccurate. I would suggest that the hypnotised percentage would be higher than 30, and the not hypnotised but going along with it would be lower than 40. So, but this can shift. But the key point is that this 40%, this middle group, it's what I call the intermediary souls in my book. So we have the black souls, the intermediary souls, and the white souls. The intermediary zone, as I refer to it, is the potential for awakening. And these people basically can go through this transformation, this process of awakening, and are able to to be shifted into the zone of not hypnotised at all. I should point out though that in my book, how I refer to the black souls is something different to this category and this qualification altogether actually. I'm more referring to the nefarious souls on this planet. So it doesn't correlate completely, but there are some aspects that overlap. So, and this is why we have seen throughout history normal people do things that are for the greater good because of this mass formation. And it means that basically what we can see is that these people are caught in this pathological collective that therefore normalizes atrocities. And this has occurred throughout history. And we've even seen this in this last couple of years with the ongoing abuses of human rights, of abuse of the Constitution, people in the various professions in authoritarian positions abusing their power, abuse of office, all these types of things that have been going on basically becomes normalised and becomes accepted by the collective for the greater good. And this is something that is very, very dangerous, because it's been shown throughout history that weak people are very dangerous. Weak people are very dangerous because they are very easily to manipulate, they're very easy to influence, and they will carry out atrocities and justify it basically that they were doing what they were told, or it's for the greater good, it's for your safety, all these things we've heard before. And it's given like a green light to basically abuse someone's human rights and commit all kinds of crimes, basically. So it's been shown throughout history that this 30% that aren't hypnotised is that when totalitarianism comes in, is that these people stop speaking out, that these people are basically silenced for whatever reason, and then we go into the total mass formation, which means that the 30% or whatever groups and organisations you want to refer to are basically therefore silenced. And this is when things become extremely dire and extremely diabolical. But it's because of the fear that people don't speak out. It's because of the fear of being ridiculed and all these other things that perpetuates this norm of insanity and this norm of totalitarianism. So that's why throughout history, people advocating, this freedom of speech is to continue to speak out in what means is available to people, to continue to have their voice heard. And this is because this grey zone, whatever name you want to give to it, intermediary zone, this 40% is very, very significant part of the population and can be influenced, and then they can actually have the courage, the inspiration to start to find their voice and understand that that just because a politician or a government makes a mandate or has a speech about something, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily law, or it's actually universal law, or it's ethical or moral. And so these aspects of consciousness are critical to the awakening, and you cannot fake this, you cannot download this, you cannot basically bypass this, which is a common thing. It actually must be integrated, and it must be integrated for an individual's awakening and for the collective awakening. And that's why these mass formation basically is this ongoing collective psychosis. And it is extremely difficult to awaken those 30% who are completely hypnotised. And there is no information, there is no statistics, there is no report, there is no video, there is no social media post that can shift their position, because they are genuinely in a state of hypnosis. And you can't really judge someone for that, for their ignorance, for their compliance, but complying with insanity has consequences. And people think that they're doing the right thing, perhaps because it is the normalisation of this insanity. Well, there is universal law, there is karmic law, and people mistakenly think that they won't be held accountable for their actions or lack of actions, or their cowardice for not speaking out, or their cowardice for going along with insanity. And this applies to all these bureaucrat positions, the medical mafia, the people that are working in organisations, in the media, the government, bureaucrats, all these sorts of people, because they are the ones actually implementing this totalitarian agenda. And there will be a time of accountability for this. And we're already starting to see it happen now more and more, that the truth is coming out. It will continue to. And big questions will be asked of people who complied with insanity. And the problem with this is this mass formation is there is an attempt in the consciousness not to take personal responsibility for the actions, to basically hide in the collective. It's well known in psychology that there is this, in the crowd consciousness, there is this thing called diminished responsibility, where people do all these crazy things when they're in crowds, such as riots or whatever. And it's a reflection of the fact that in the crowd, they somehow think that they won't be held accountable. There's not the same personal responsibility for their actions. Well, this is an even greater deception of the cartel, and it's also a very ignorant point of view, because everyone who is involved at this whatever level, going along with it, enforcing it, complying with it, is held accountable in whatever degree of action or inaction through cowardice that they're involved in. And this is not because I say so. This is not because this is my opinion. This is basically the truth of universal law. And in this age, at this time, we are completely, pretty much, not completely, but very close to being completely separated from an understanding of what universal law is. And this basically means that we are living in this illusion that there is no accountability. We're just doing our job. We're just going along with what to get along and all these sorts of things. Well, the bitter pill is coming for many people now, and we're already starting to see the effects of this mass formation. And just because the crowd is doing something doesn't mean that it is legitimate, that it is valid, that it is truthful, that it is right, that it is morally just. It doesn't mean any of those things whatsoever. So the more someone raises their consciousness actually, and the more raises their vibration, the more they're separating from the hive mind, the more conscious they're becoming, and the more they're able to actually make their own decisions. They have increased lucidity, increased ability to perceive reality for what it really is, not for what we want it to be in this smoke screen of mass formation, but the actual truth in terms of universal law, in terms of having this discernment, this ability to understand, to perceive, to break through the manipulation, to break free of the hypnosis, and also to free ourselves of this desire to be accepted by the collective, which is part of the hive mind. This is actually a lower state of consciousness as well. I go into much detail on this in my book as to why people are obsessed with being accepted by others, by being praised by others, by this false sense of security being in the hive mind. If the hive mind, the collective, is engaging in a medical procedure that is going to have colossal negative ramifications, then what justification can you give that for doing it yourself? Just because the collective is doing it doesn't mean it's going to give positive effects, or there will be positive solutions. And this is something that is going to be extremely confronting for so many people going forward. And I feel that it will actually be a place of radical growth and radical awakening for many people, this entire process, because they'll start to see the insanity of the collective and the fact that they were attempting, even subconsciously, not to take responsibility for their own actions, but to basically to defer these or somehow put this responsibility on someone else. And at the same time, this will be another aspect of the global awakening. Thanks for watching, everybody. More videos to come soon. We live in epic times.